by the members. During the pandemic situation and lockdown system, we continued our interactive activities, including discussions, interclub contests in web system. And this is the first time we opened the webinar to all, and we got responses which is really beyond our expectations. We promise you to present some other attractive webinars in coming days. Now it is over to Rajdeep to start a fantastic session on his experience on a studio light portrait, on which I think he is the real personality with a bouquet of knowledge and with the flag of a leader. Rajdeep, please.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not sure if everyone is conversant in Bengali, so I'll be conducting this session in mixed language, sometimes maybe using English or Hindi or Bengali as well. So if you feel that there is an issue of understanding, please do let Mr. Ashok Samadhan know. I'll just repeat that for you. All right, I'll be switching off my camera. I'll be sharing the screen with you so that we can discuss about indoor light portraits. And again, I'm stressing on the word discussion. See, all of us here are photographers, and somehow or the other, you might have come across different sessions or workshops or attended some lessons regarding portraiture or portraits. Now, many of you might have some kind of experience, knowledge as well. So what I'm going to do from my end is we are going to discuss the basic of indoor lights, different light options that we have, and I'm going to show you some images done by me. And again, after that, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer those. And if time does not permit, please forward those to Ashokda again, and definitely I'll get back to you. All right. Small information about me. Of course, my name is Rajdeep Biswas. I have completed diploma in photography, and I have a few photography distinctions as well. By profession, I'm into business management, and my specialization is human resources. And in photography, I consider myself as a photography enthusiast, and my area of specialization is artificial light. And my areas of interest are indoor portraiture and fine art nude. Okay, so before we start discussing about portraits, let me share a few thoughts that I always do. See, every individual, each and every individual in this world are unique. Now, each and every individual have some specific characteristics or personality or attitude or unique mannerisms which make them unique. Now, as an artist who capture portraits, it's your it's your will or wish or objective that you should try to emphasize that special trait in a person. So let me read what is written in here and let me explain again. Portrait is a work of art. Of course, we are not into documentary photography here. We are into fine art. Or a good portrait will always contain at least one element that reveals the subject's personality, attitude, unique mannerisms, or any of the other features or traits that form the individual's nature of the person. Actually, in a nutshell, the last line, it will tell us something about the subject. All right. As we all have access to the World Wide Web or the internet or the search engines that we have. Now, it's full of information regarding different genres of photography. You need to understand that as an individual photographer, you need to have your own thoughts into your portraits. What you want to portray, if it's an objective portrait or it's a subjective portrait, and all these things. And while doing portraiture in indoors, you should keep in mind the lighting techniques, the pose, angle, etc. And please remember, there is no formula for this. With each and every individual subject, your light position, your pose, angle of click, everything is going to change. So remember, it's what you wish to show the entire world. You need to click it that way. Okay. Now, indoor light, before I go into artificial light, let me just give you this, show you this diagram. On the extreme left, it is something of a reflector. I would say anything like a reflector. In the middle, you would see outline of a person. On the right hand, you would see a window. And on the extreme right hand side image, you would see a person sitting and two windows on either side. Please note that one of the windows, which is the window on the left, is small in size. Now, after showing this diagram, let me just come into the explanations. Now, indoor portraiture doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have, artificial light. You can always create indoor portraits by using window light and with the help of a reflector. The images that I showed, just a representation of how you can do it. Just remember that if you want to do portraits in indoor with natural light coming in from the windows, it's not possible for everyone to have windows on either side of the room. It's just a perfect example that I have cited, but it's just a guideline that what you can do. I've written it. Window light is both soft and moderately directional, producing a good modeling. In a room with a single window, the lighting is so one-sided that it creates deep shadows. So if I go to the second image, you see light is coming from the window on the right. So a portion of the figure would be highlighted and the opposite end would have dark shadows. You can understand that the main light is on the left-hand side of the subject or the right-hand side of the photographer. And to counter the shadows, which is formed by the obstruction of the subject, we have another window on the left-hand side, which is again daylight. Now, all these two sources of light will create an atmosphere which you can use to create indoor portraits without the use of artificial light. Okay. Now, I'm coming into artificial light. Now, artificial light is always, as you know, if you have had any experience with this, is always under photographer's control. An important point to be kept in mind while setting up portrait lighting is that there should be one dominant main light. All the other lights are being subordinate or subservient to it. Let me explain what I just read. If you're using two lights or three lights, 3-point lighting, now one light, you need to identify which one is your main light. That is going to be your main light, and the other one or two lights are going to be just supporting the main light. The positioning of the main light source is most important factor within our control. The angle, the direction, and the distance at which the main light is positioned has a profound influence on the modeling and overall effect. See, it's quite natural if you have a subject sitting in a room and you take an artificial light source, just put it in front of the subject and you turn it on. Now what you're going to see is a flat light falling on your subject. Just try to visualize the atmosphere. Put a light, you turn it on, and you see the subject completely flat. There is no shadows, or the shadows which are there, which are not going to be within your frame, and all those things. Now, slowly imagine that you are moving the light, maybe on your right or on your left. Let me take an example of when you are moving the light to your left as a photographer, to your right as a photographer, and so on. Now, once you are moving the light, what you would actually see, observe, is slowly there is a shadow which is coming. There is a presence of light as well as shadow. The more you move the light on the right, the harsher the shadows become. Now you stop at a certain after moving to a certain limit, you stop, and then what you do is you raise the light vertically. Then what changes will you notice? It's quite simple. Notice the shadow of nose, or the shadows beneath the lower lip, all these things. So why I'm saying you all these things is you need to visualize the effects of the light before you finalize what you want. If you have already in your mind what you want and you have the subject, you set the light according to that subject, it's fine. Otherwise, first visualize, then go ahead and set your light. Remember, while positioning the main light, one should see the catch light in the eyes as much as practicable. Remember, catch light cannot be visible always. You can, obviously, during processing, you may do certain things which might get you catch light in the eyes of the subject. But trust me, if you are sending the images for any contest or anything, and once the judges are conversant with this topic, they're gonna get it. Reflected light has the softest and broadest quality of all and is obtained by turning the lights on to a matte white reflecting surface instead of directly on the sitter. Now, this is the practice that I follow. I have, say, the subject is sitting. I have one key light on the right hand side, or on my right hand side, and the wash light, which I use from the left hand side. If I'm using a light, I'm not hitting the subject straight away with the light. Rather, what I do is I flip the light, let it hit a reflector, and the reflected light goes to the subject. Now, why I do that? Anyways, you might have a question on your mind that if the light is already diffused, why I'm doing this? To further diffuse the light, to further have a subtle difference between the highlight and the shadow portions. Now, it is the soft light, as we generally refer to, it actually suits women and children because it produces, as I said a while ago, soft shadows. Okay, now we are coming into positions of while placing lights. Now, while placing the main light, one should observe that the quality of light which is influenced by the light's distance from the subject. Now, what does this mean? Let's read the second line. Watch from the camera position the formation of highlights on the forehead, bridge of nose, brows, upper parts of the cheeks, and chin to determine the distance of the light from the face. Now, why this is important? If the light is too near, you will get output of places with burned out or low gradation of tones. If the light is placed too far, then it will be a flat, weak loop. Now, remember, friends, it's not that you click an image and then you go to your post processing and you do whatever things you do and you finish an image. Well, of course, if you are an editor, it's fine. But remember that we are photographers. So our aim should always be to have an in-camera excellence as far as practicable. So remember, placing of lights, just take a test shot, see the tones, see the highlights, see the shadows, then set your light according to that, and then proceed with your shoot. Remember, for every face, there is a point which gives the best result, sheen and texture of the skin. Now, this is the line which again emphasizes the fact that I told you that there is no formula for artificial light setup that you're going to apply for all subjects. It's not possible. Now, if we have a strong, full of character male subject, it's logical to emphasize his character, and this demands a low key lighting. Okay, there is one new term, low key lighting. I'm going to come to that later. Now, pictures full of shadow or darkness have a greater tendency to create emotional effects than those lighting compositions which consist predominantly of light and subtle midtones, the high key images. Obviously, when we see an image with light and shade, what should I say? Play of light and shade, it gives us a sense of, what should I say? Some kind of emotions. However, when we see a high key image, we just see a beautiful image. That's it. That's the difference. Now, low key lighting is most effective with dark background and dark skin subject with rugged features. Again, this is an indicative statement that I have made. Doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you cannot have a low key lighting setup for a fair subject. You can obviously do that. And as we discussed a while ago regarding women and children, if you go for high key effect, you would see, say for example, we take an example of a blonde girl wearing light tone clothing. Blonde girl with a light tone clothing, you generally would not associate much of a shadow, darkness with it. Rather, you would go with softer tones, soft colors, combination of colors, all these things. So it's important. It's not only about the light, it's about your subject, about what the subject is wearing, what is the skin tone of the subject. All these things matter when you are setting your light. If you are going to capture a child, now it is not possible for a child to follow all your instructions like an adult can do. So what's best for you is to have a lighting with the least amount of shadows so that the child is able to move freely and you're able to concentrate more on capturing the moments rather than waiting or directing the child to do what you want. Okay, let's go to the next point. As per general perception, highlights on forehead, nose, cheeks, and chin seem to emphasize these lightest areas of the face, while the parts of the face and neck in the shadows to recede. This tends to create a three-dimensional telling effect. The best form rendering of a three-dimensional object is achieved by a lighting which needs the line of camera vision at an angle between 45 and 90. Now, what does it mean? A while ago, if you remember, I discussed, once you try to move the source of light on the right or on the left, and then vertically up or vertically down, you would see change of shadows on the subject. And the light, the highlights are mostly observed on the forehead, the nose, the cheeks, and the chin. So remember to look for the highlights in those areas. Okay. Now let us come to the fill light. The sole function of fill light is to illuminate the shadows. Remember, it is not for anything else but to illuminate the shadows or give relief to the shadows. If you are using two lights, remember the second light is just to give relief to the shadows, unless and until you are working on flat light. The fill-in light is diffused and placed closer to the camera at lens level and on the side of the lens opposite to that of the main light. Of course, the main light is on the right-hand side of the photographer. The fill-in light is on the left-hand side of the photographer. Now, the last line is very important. The distance between the fill-in and the subject is adjusted to bring out the effect and contrast desired. Say, I'm taking an arbitrary example with here. On the right hand side, the key light you have is set to power 8, and the light is placed approximately, say, 4 feet from your subject. Now, on the left hand side, you have a fill-in light. There are many ways that you can use that light to illuminate the shadows. Number one, you can keep the fill-in light in 8 as well, and then increase the distance of the light from the subject. Now remember, the distance of the light source from the subject, you are increasing that distance. Or if you want to keep it in the same distance as your main light is, simply decrease the power of the fill light to, say, 3 or 4, just the half. Now what happens is, the main light is hitting your subject with the power of 8 and creating shadows. Your fill-in light is hitting the subject with the power of 4. Now what it's doing is, it's relieving the shadows and giving you details in that. Now how much detail you need, how much contrast you desire, is that you can control with your fill-in light. Okay, now with all the discussion, we definitely want to continue contrast. Now we often hear the word, it's more of contrast, the image demands less contrast. Now what is contrast? Definitely you all must have an idea about contrast, but nonetheless, let me just read the paragraph. Contrast is different in the amount of light. The main light falls on the highlight of the face, and the amount of light falls on the shadow side of the face. Just what I told you a while ago. Now remember, human eye have a wide range of contrast. However, even if you consider film or digital sensors, it has a capacity, a certain capacity to capture those tones. So again, it's very important. I mean, based on your camera, maybe your full frame, or it's a medium format or a crop sensor, whatever you're using, it's very important to understand, to click a test image and understand till what level of contrast your camera is able to handle. Based on that, you have to keep that in mind as well when you are setting your light. Why I'm saying you this? Say you are setting light for details which may be captured by a full frame camera sensor. However, crop sensor may not be able to capture the same details. That is the reason it's very important to understand your camera and its limits so that you can set the light based on that. Okay, lights. It's just basically two forms. One is continuous and another is flash. Just a few names that have given here. Tungsten incandescent. It's actually generally the household lamps, or theater lighting, or car headlights, and simply those. The fluorescent or CFL, as the name suggests, these are daylight balance lights. LEDs, which we use these days. And last one is the HMI. Now HMI are very big, produce a lot of heat, and the lighting is continuous, and it's very tough. I've worked with it. It's very tough to move that light. So these are types of continuous lights, artificial lights. Now flash. Well, most of the cameras we use do have a pop-up flash. Mainly all the, if I'm not mistaken, all the crop sensor models do have that. Most of the full frames do not have that. However, photographic flash is nothing more than a brief, intense flash of light used by photographers to illuminate a subject. Of course, why are you using external light source? Illuminate your subject. It's normally synchronized so that it fires during a brief period of time when the camera shutter is open. As you remember, the front and the back. Now, when the shutter is pressed, the flash needs to be synchronized in such a way that when the flash is synchronized, the entire shutter is open. Otherwise, you might experience grading black either on the left hand side of the image, or on the right hand side, or on the top, or on at the bottom, based on your camera mode. Okay, as we are discussing, different types of flash. One, of course, it's on camera flash, dedicated to the camera, focusing the camera even in the dark, setting themselves to camera's ISO settings, calculating the exposure and adjusting power output accordingly. Studio flash units have more power and be used with modifiers. Now, studio flash, for those who are not conversant with working in studio environment, there are basically two types generally. One is generator, also known as back and head, basically consists of a box that sits on the floor. A cable connects to the box to the actual flash unit. So the power source is basically a box, and the light is separate. And the second one is monoblock, what we generally see in a studio environment. It's everything contained in the head. Let me show you the images. On the left hand side, you would see a generator, and on the right hand side, you would see a monorail. Now, generator lights are generally used when you are going outdoors and you do not have a source of electricity. You can use these. And generally, what we use in studio environment are the monorails. Okay, these are the different components of a studio flash head. One is flash tube, the round one, which is actually your light, which flashes. The modeling lamp, which actually is used to show the effect light is going to give you. And last but not the least, and very important, the cooling fan, because with continuous use, the heat is generated and cooling fan is required to downgrade the heat. Okay. Now, generally, these are the things which we find in a studio environment: flash transmitter, soft boxes or diffusers, reflectors, barn door, honeycomb grid, beauty dish, snoot, umbrella. Now, this list is not exhaustive. There are many other things which you can use. On the extreme left top, you see a soft box, and then you see a reflector, and then after that you see a snoot. After that you see a burn door. Coming to the bottom, extremely on the left, you see honeycomb, and then you see umbrella, and last, the IR transmitter, which you place on your camera. Okay, enough of light, and then now we come to a very important thing, which is makeup. Now, friends, please remember that makeup, to what extent is required, that as a photographer, as an artist, you need to visualize, and then you need to direct that to your makeup artist, or if you are doing it yourself, you need to keep certain things on your mind. Now, the aim of makeup in a nutshell, again, all the discussions are based for our fine art photography, not for commercial photography or anything else. Now, why we use makeup is to accentuate the eyes, the bone structure, and the mouth. Balance the face by shading. Hair and eye color must blend with the makeup. Obviously, if you have a certain makeup put on your subject and you have a different hair color or eye color, that doesn't add up. Okay. Now we are slowly beginning to go into the do's and don'ts of indoor portraiture. Now, posing is very important for you to communicate or talk to your subject. See, there are two kinds of portraits on a broader sense that you can have. One is an objective portrait, that you have certain objective and you're going to get it done through your subject. In that case, you need to communicate what you want, how you want, and what kind of expressions or eye expression or facial expression, whatever you want, you tell that to the subject. Another one, of course, is to tell the subject, be yourself. You give expressions according to your will and wish. I'll just capture those. Then it becomes a subjective portrait. These are two broad aspects that I have discussed. There are many other things to discuss in portrait, but by going to all of those, it becomes very lengthy, and many of you would actually leave the meeting, I would say. All right. Remember that posing, all poses cannot be done by all the subjects. Certain poses may be very difficult, or he or she might not be comfortable. So you need to communicate that as well. If your subject is not comfortable with the pose you're suggesting, please remember, you're not going to get a very good output out of it. It's very important, or rather, it's of utmost importance that the subject is comfortable. Okay. If your subject is shorter in height, or if the chair is tall, try to provide support for her leg or his legs so that they get a support and they don't exhaust. Okay. Again, if after all these, if you feel that you are not able to capture what you were looking for, might as well you go ahead and sit in the model's chair and show the model or show the subject what you want. We have done, everybody who practice indoor portraiture, we have done this on various occasions. Now, everything done, everything in place. Once you are prepared to click your shutter, then you need to concentrate which moment to click. Remember, please remember, if you miss a moment, if you want to, or if you try to recreate that, well, you may be able to do that. Trust me, you will never get the same moment. You might get something much better, or you might get something which you do not want to capture. However, the moment, once it is gone, it's gone. You need to concentrate and identify the moment when the pose, expression, everything is perfect according to what you want. Okay, some hardcore discussions which we can always refer to our internet search engines. However, internet is has a plethora of information, so let me just cut it down to the basic. These are the different light schemes that we encourage you to know, because why am I saying you this is you can only break the rule once you know the rule. So learn it like a scholar, break it like an artist. That's what I say. Okay, first one is rainbow lighting. Second is loop. Third is butterfly. Then split. Then broad light, short light, hair light, criminal light, and top light. Okay, I'm going to show you each of these lights with an image so that you are able to understand it in a much better way. Again, before I start with Rembrandt, let me tell you again, it's not always that you will get Rembrandt effect placing the light at the same place, at the same height for all subjects. That you need to adjust according to your subjects. Always remember that, please. Okay, how would you identify its Rembrandt? Basically, it is characterized by a small triangular highlight on the shadowed cheek of the subject. Shadowed cheek, highlighted triangle on the shadowed cheek of the subject. It is more of a masculine lighting and used commonly with a weak field light to accentuate the shadow side highlight. Okay. It is actually a very popular technique for studio portraits, generally achieved by single light at 45 degrees to the camera and 45 in vertical towards the subject. While applying rim-raw effects, photographers use reflector opposite to the light, so to minimize the harshness of shadow. Fill-in light may also serve you the same purpose. On the right-hand side, you might see a graphical representation. Since it's 2D, it's not possible to show you what the effect is. However, I do have an image from which you can identify it. If you see this image, see this triangular highlighted portion on the shadowed part of the cheek. Now that's what we refer to, or that is the identification of rim-raw light. This is the highlight part. As it's quite evident from this image that light, the key light, was on the left-hand side of the subject at an elevated position. Why elevated position? Because the shadow of the nose is falling on the right and the right side cheek of the subject, and it's meeting with the shadow of the cheek, and it's creating a triangle. Now that is the identification of rim-raw. And for this particular image, I used a fill-in light just to give a relief to the shadows. Loop. Loop lighting is characterized by a small shadow of the subject's nose on the cheek. It is suggested not to let the shadow touch the upper lip. I missed the upper lip, the word upper. Now, why it is generally used? It is actually used generally to straighten a crooked nose, and it has a slimming effect on the face. Then loop light. Main light is moved towards the side of the subject and above eye level to a certain shadow under the nose. Just a while back, we were discussing about rim-raw. Just like that, the shadow of the nose. However, for rim-raw, the shadow falls on the cheek. Now I'm going to just move the light a bit closer so that the shadow comes below the nose. It looks like an inverted V or like an U. However, you need to keep in mind that the U does not touch the upper lip of the subject. Okay. Again, you may use reflector or fill-in light as per your wish to soften the shadows. If you see this, see the U or a U under the nose. This is the characteristics of loop light. Now next is butterfly or paramount light, which is, this is a very famous, or what should I say, very popular light scheme which photographers generally use, because most of the portraits that we come across are female portraits. Now, why the name butterfly is because it's actually characterized by butterfly-shaped shadow that is cast below the nose. Again, remember, very important, one point to remember, that the shadow of the nose never touch the upper lip of the subject. Oh, I didn't miss the upper word in here. Oh, good. The butterfly pattern can be quite useful for a variety of faces, but it is at best on lean subjects with high and pronounced cheekbones. This type of lighting is traditionally feminine lighting pattern that produces symmetrical butterfly-like shadow beneath the subject's nose. And as well as that, it tends to emphasize high cheekbones. It is generally not used for men because it tends to hollow the cheeks and the eye sockets are, inside. So it's generally not used for men. Again, for paramount light, if you want a soft paramount light, I would always advise use of a reflector. Just the subject may be holding a reflector in here, or you place the reflector like this, pointing towards the light, because the light is generally placed above the subject. Why? It's coming from here, and then it's create the shadow of nose. Now it is a single light source and it creates harsh shadows. So you place a reflector down and the shadows are relieved. Okay, let's see. And this butterfly light is also known as paramount light, since this was used by Paramount Pictures in their movies. Okay. And if you see the image, just beneath the nose, you would see a butterfly-like structure. And also the cheek cheekbones are, the contour of the cheekbones are quite prominent in here. Now, in this image, particularly in this image, I used reflector, but in very, so that the light is not, the shadows are not relieved to that much. That's why you see harsh shadows just beneath the, on the neck, just beneath the nose and all these things. Okay. Now let me come to split. It's, as the name suggests, split light splits face of the subject in halves of illuminated and shadow areas. Then often it's equal actually. It emphasizes facial texture. Now, why we use split light is it's used to narrow a white face. I mean, if I ask the photographer to click my image, I would always mostly use short light or split light. Okay. Nonetheless, it can also be used with weak field to hide facial imperfections. Split light can be used with or without fill light for dramatic effect. Here it is. It's actually dividing the subject's face mostly in a half, and as you can see that one half of the face is illuminated, the other half of the face is in shadows. And again, another fill light was used from the right of the subject to give relief to the shadows. Okay. Now moving to broad light. Now this lighting arrangement of the subject's face relative to the camera position, generally this kind of light is used for subjects whose face are, not broad. It gives your face a broad effect, and in broad day, you can use broad light with, I mean, the dream broad, speed or loop. All these three different light schemes can be used for as broad light. How? I'm going to show you. If you see this, now the main identification of broad light, remember, if you see the subject, this image, the highlighted portion, as in the key light is on the left of the photographer or to the right of the subject. Now it's hitting the subject, and the highlighted portion, as you can see, it is pointing towards my camera, and the shadow portion is visible to the camera, but the directly what the camera sees is the nearest eye is the highlighted portion. This is the identification of broad light. As you can see, you can use it with with Rembrandt light scheme or loop or split, whatever you wish. Or just the opposite. If you want to cut down a face with a person with a huge face, if you want to cut it down, if you want to give you an impression that it's narrow, and if you want to with bold highlights and all these things, short light is for you. See, the same subject. In this image, again, please notice that the camera lens is pointing towards the shadow portion of the face. In this case, the key light is on the right of the photographer, and the camera is pointing towards the shadow part of the face. Excuse me. So these are the differences between broad and short light. Broad light is used to show broadness of a narrow face generally. Short light is just the opposite. Okay. These are light schemes which we generally do not come across. However, since we are discussing indoor lights, it's obvious that I'm going to discuss this as well. But in case of criminal light, the main light is the key light is the only light source, and it's actually first time I'm saying it's actually the bottom of the subject, towards the bottom of the subject. If I'm the subject, the light has to be in here. It's hitting me from below. That's how it is. If the subject looks towards the camera, say I'm looking to the camera, towards the camera, it produces a unique light and shadow details used to portray something evil. Generally, if you try to imagine the yesteryear's movies of black and white, you would see, or you might imagine, or you might remember that the devils or the evil people, characters were portrayed using criminal light. Now, in case of top light, the main and the only source of light is placed at the top of the subject, pointing towards the subject. Simply in here, it's pointing towards the subject, just above the subject. Why I'm saying all these things, I'll come to the images and then you would understand. Okay. Now, rim or hair light is used for model with dark or black hair. Place the light high so it spills the top of the head, as well as separating the sides of the hair from the dark background. This is the use of hair or rim light. You might not understand much with this, but you will understand with this. As you can see, light is placed below the subject, and the identifications of criminal light is you just observe the shadow of the nose and that of the eyes. Definitely, it's not portraying an evil character with this lovely lady. However, generally criminal light is used to portray evil. Okay, top light is just placing the main light above the subject. You can see you can use top light to your effect, just to give texture or shine to the hairs. However, remember, if you're using top light, it creates this kind of abrupt highlight on the nose. So if you are using top light for to highlight the subjects here, do remember to use cutter along with your light source so that light does not spill on subject's nose. I don't know whether this is visible properly or not. However, hair light or rim light that we use, these are basically, it creates a difference from the background. This image was taken with black background, and with hair light, I can see a definite contour of the entire head because I use the hair light. Now remember, in digital photography, while using any kind of light, please, again, I would request you, please remember not to have highlight blown areas. It is unacceptable. Like in films, we used to have shadowless areas, unacceptable. For digital, it's highlight capped areas. So when you're using hair light, remember to use it to such an effect that it does not burn out hairs or produces an halo, which actually is very obstructing to look at. I mean, your subject is in front. If you're using much accentuated light with highlights all over, it tends to divert my attention. So what you can do is you can use a snoot from a distance, or if you're using softbox, just place it behind the subject at the ground, pointing towards the head of the subject at an angle, at a very low power, so that you just get the outline. Now these are pretty important. All these are coming from the experience that I've had with all these years working with artificial light. You might have, or I would say, you must have come across images where you see a portion of the nose is highlighted. Now let me tell you, that is mostly in 99 cases out of 100, it's an issue with the light. It's not mastery of light. It's actually created by highlighted spots are created in nose. It's actually due to leak light. Now why this happens is model moved her face or his face to a certain angle, and the light leaked and highlighted the nose. Now again, if you're using Kickel light or dimension light or contour light from a certain angle, again there is a possibility that if the subject is moving his or her face, then you might get this issue. Remember, you should not have this in your portraits. It's one of the negative aspects of your portraits to have lick light falling on subject's nose. Okay. Again, I have used one more term in here while shooting semi-profile portraits. Okay, what is semi-profile portraits? If you remember, we used to have coins till 1980s with one side of the face visible on the coin, and other part of the face is not visible. Now that is profile portrait. One side of the face is visible. That is profile portrait. What is semi-profile? Entire one side of the face is visible and some part of the other part of the face is visible. That is semi-profile portrait. Now, while we try to capture semi-profile portraits, I have often come across when, say for example, I'm turning like this, the outline of the face is cutting to the eyes, eye of the subject. Now, again, please remember to avoid this. This is again one negative aspect of portraiture. Just move around. I mean, you may just ask the subject to move the face a bit towards you, or you may position yourself on the left or the right, just to get rid of this issue. Please remember, these things are not generally found on the internet. These are points that matter. While your subject is looking towards a certain direction, again, I have come across, or not me, many of the photographers have come across portraits. Well, it's a fantastic portrait otherwise, light-wise, pose-wise, everything is fantastic. Suddenly what I notice is the subject is looking extremely on the right or extremely on the left. Just observe my eyes. Oh, you cannot see me because I've turned off my camera. Anyways, just remember that the eyeballs are extreme on the right side or extremely on the left hand side. Now what it does is the camera exposes the white portion of the eyes mostly. I mean, the white portion of both the eyes are straight to the camera. It doesn't look good, my friends. So try to avoid that. Tell your subject, instead of looking extremely on the left, just to adjust the vision a bit on the right, and there you have it. Let me read it for you. While your subject is looking towards a particular direction, sometimes we see that major part of the white portion of the eyes are visible, mainly due to the angle at which the subject is looking vis-a-vis the angle at which the photographer is standing. A slight movement of the eyeballs could not only help you to overcome the situation, but also change the overall appeal of the portrait. Why the overall appeal? Just try to visualize. You have a fantastic portrait with fantastic tones, fantastic colors, fantastic texture. Suddenly, you see the subject looking out of the frame, extremely on the right hand side or on the left hand side. That's the vision of the subject. So it's actually driving my own vision out of the frame. It's not keeping me in the frame. So the overall appeal of the portrait is downgraded. Use of hands, again, remember, it's again one point which I've seen many people goofing up with this. When you're asking your subject to portrait, remember that hands are just a way to guide your vision or the vision of the viewer towards the subject's face or the expression. It's not to be used in such a way that it disrupts the balance of the image. Many a times I've seen subjects photos wherein the subject is holding her hand in such a way it seems like she's punching her own face. Just try to visualize that holding like this. It doesn't look good, my friends. So just, if you're using or if you're asking your subject to use her hand or his hand, try to use it in such a way that it does not disturb the balance of your image. While using the hand, remember the palm of hand is highly reflective. please try to avoid the light hitting open palm. Just ask the subject to bend the hands inside, bend the hand inside so that the palm of the hand is not visible to the sensor. Otherwise, it creates a highlighted spot and it diverts your attention from the subject. Again, friends, these points people do not discuss. These points you may not find in the internet. So please keep these points on your mind. One more thing, yesterday's here is not anymore. Today we are living in in an era where there's a certain term that we always come across, which is called environmental portrait. I mean, see, generally people associate environmental portrait with where the environment is visible, mountainscapes and everything. Now, why not studio? Studio is also an environment. I mean, you're spending money, you're setting up, and all these things. You're clicking an image of the subjects of the subject. So as well, you should have part of the background, or rather the detail of the background retained. Friends, if you go into portraiture, if you want to specialize in portraiture, remember, if you have a detail lace background, completely darkened, completely whitened, doesn't show that you're a master. It only portrays, mostly it portrays that you do not have control of light. Remember, when you're using artificial light, in my shoots personally, I use lights as a separate light just to have detail of the background. Remember, this is very important. And one more thing, why it's again important for people who are into montage or creative photography, because it gives you a separation. It gives you the separation of the subject from the from the background, so that you can have an ease of cutting out the subject. Okay. The two features which outwardly seem to control expression are the eyes and the mouth, of course. The eyes, as they say, are the mirror of one's character or inner personality. Usually, it is better to have eyes looking in the direction towards which the head is turned. Of course, if the subject's head is turned on the right-hand side and she's looking on the left-hand side, doesn't make much sense, or it doesn't look good as it with only the slightest departure from a normal level gaze. So, if your subject is looking on the right, I hope her expression, her eyes are also looking towards the right side, not the other way. Just remember that while you are using indoor light, the eye sockets should be well illuminated and there should be catch light in the eyes as far as practicable. For all light schemes, it's not possible. As far as practicable, try to have catch light in the eyeball of the eyes of the subject. And while you are capturing portraits, if you see that your subject is giving you stares or giving you a blank stare, just ask the subject to close the eyes for a few seconds, give her or him a glass of water, wait for a few seconds, and then ask her or him to again resume the session and open the eyes. Okay, now let's come to the mouth. The mouth is very mobile, expressive feature capable of conveying the whole range of feelings. Hands can be expressive and communicative as the face and can form an interesting and revealing part of an image. The hands play a crucial role by their position in relation to the subject, give balance to the composition. Friends, what I discussed just a while ago, it's just giving balance to your composition. So do not, rather avoid using hands in such a way that it disbalances your image. And if you see that the hand is creating much highlight, you can always use a scarf or a handbag or spectacles or book or anything like that in the hand, just to divert that attention. Okay. Every human face has certain peculiarities of feature. However, while making a pictorial portrait, one can make use of these. Even very ordinary features have some angles that are more pleasing than others. Emphasize them. Trust me, friends, each one of us have a certain angle at which we look the best. To make the best of what is in front of the camera, slight adjustment of head and camera has its effect on the features. How? A long nose. Now, I'm going to read this. Just try to visualize. If needed, close your eyes and visualize. A long nose. A person with a long nose looks longer if the head is tilted down. You're pointing camera to a person with long nose, okay? And the head is tilted down, the nose looks long. A short nose looks shorter if the head is raised. So remember, these small adjustments do wonders to your portraits. A broad nose looks broader if taken fully in front. Straight, the subject straight looking at your camera, you click an image with a subject with broad nose, it looks broader. Turning up and sideways and putting part of it in shadow similarly reduces its width. Avoid having the tip of the nose coincide with the contour of the cheek or project only slightly beyond it. Just remember what I discussed a while ago regarding the outline of the face cutting the eye. Similarly, if your subject is creating an angle for you to click, remember the nose should not be cut with the outline of the face. Okay. Heads up, for head up shoulders portrait, keep optical axis of the lens at the height of the subject's lip and tip of nose. In simple terms, if you're using a head and a shoulder portrait, place your camera in such a way that it's in alignment with the nose or the tip of the nose or the lip of the subject. Now, by placing a camera slightly lower level of the eyes of the subject, apparently adds to the height and dignity of the subject. Dignity is just an added term, but it gives you an impression of height of the subject. Now, if you raise the camera above the center, and then what? If you raise your camera above the center of the face to help elongate the nose, narrow the chin, reduce the fullness of jaw. What it means is, if a person has what should I say, a heavier cheek, what you do is you raise the camera to an upper point so that the cheeks look narrower. This is a small adjustment. Try to visualize. It's not there for you to read. It's for you to understand and visualize. If needed, close your eyes and try to visualize. Ekjon মানুষ যার cheeks খুব heavy, if I'm raising the camera level, the cheek বা তার গালগুলো খুব short মনে হবে. It's actually a way that we do it. Reduce the fullness of the jaws or broaden the forehead. Likewise, I mean, if I'm lowering down my camera, the nose looks short. Okay, the height of the forehead and the width of the forehead is reduced. When we use this, so for example, if a subject whose hair level is his or her forehead is big, so what we do is we lower down the camera level so that the viewpoint, so that we get a viewpoint, so that the forehead is smaller. Again, it seems small, it is not actually smaller. These are small adjustments which you need to do according to your subjects. Okay. Long neck requires a high viewpoint to make it appear shorter. Hair, again, if you have heavy cheeks, if you have a subject with heavy cheeks, do one thing, ask her to comb the hair and put it in front. What you're doing is basically you're cutting the cheeks with hair. It's just small tits and bits which will help you get an image which you want. Okay, what happened here? Okay, yeah. Now I'm coming to processing. So this is an area regarding which I come across where is almost 3 days a week from different individuals. I'm going to repeat what I say to each one of them. Friends, each image demands your complete attention, and each and every image is unique. That you click is unique. Maybe you're clicking an image, different images of the same subject. However, there are fine differences between each image, between those images. Now, there is no hard and fast formula for this. You need to first identify what processing is required to enhance your image. Friends, please remember, processing is required. What we do is to enhance the already clicked image. It is not a different thing that you are doing to the image. It's an integral part of imaging. So once you have visualized or pre-visualized what you want to do with your image, you need to finalize which tools you want to use to achieve this output. There are many tools available which you can use to process your images. However, please, I'm repeating, please try to pre-visualize what you want to do with your image and then finalize the tools and just use them one by one as you want. Remember that editing has to stop. I'm going to stress on this. It has to stop at a certain point. Once you go beyond that point, friends, you start ruining your image. Now, many might come across how to identify. I'm afraid this kind of identification of this point comes with experience and with your own perception. Many of you may like harsh contrast. Many of us may like a balanced contrast. Many of you may like, rich colors. Many of them may like subtle colors. So it's entirely up to you what you want to do with your image. These are my contact details for you to get in touch with. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, these are few images. I have also kept one image after increasing its sharpness just to show you how it looks when the sharpness is increased maximum. And this is again a conceptual fine art portrait. And this one, if you look at this portrait, if you look at the face of the portrait, I have specifically increased the sharpness of the face. And I'm using a pretty big monitor right now. It's around 27 inches. Trust me, friends, the face looks full of freckles since I've increased the sharpness. Otherwise, if you consider this as a good portrait, just increasing the sharpness, it actually destroyed the portrait. If you want to know about light schemes or setups of any portrait, just let me know. This is again one image from the same shoot. If you see, I have used hair light. Okay, however, you can see details of each and every hair. It's not that the hairs are blown out. This is very important, friends. Okay, and one more negative aspect of this image, let me tell you, is her open mouth with where I can see teeth, her teeth. Now, this is generally regarded as one of, again, a negative aspect of an image. However, I've kept this image just to show you with a strong expression how an image can be destroyed if a subject has just slightly opened her mouth and the teeth are visible. It looks like a rabbit. So I have discarded this image actually. With this image I did not, but with this image I did. With this image I did. Because if you look at if you notice the look of this image, the expression of this image is kind of a intriguing, surprising look. It's not that a subject would be properly, prepared by closing her mouth and everything and all these things. However, generally, if you have open mouth with teeth visible, it's considered as one of the negative aspects of portrait. Again, I'm showing you portraits of this subject specifically because have this issue with this particular subject of her opening her mouth mostly, and by doing that, I have lost many images which otherwise would have been much better. If you look at this image, see the mouth is closed. The catch light are there. I'll give you a heads up regarding this image. I'll just stop for a moment. This image received the second award for the second award for all over the world. A portrait contest was done by PSA. This image received the second award. Now, I sent a request to the chairman of this competition asking about details, why I got the second position and why not first. And it's not a complaint, but I want to know the feedback of the jury panel, if at all possible, because I'm not here to question jury decision, because I always deem jury decision is final and I accept that. Trust me, I had many lines, I don't remember how many lines exactly, written back to me. You know what they wrote? I remember they wrote that there was a tug of war between the image which was at judge the first and this image. Only one fine point why this image became second was the position of catchlight. See, the position of catchlight in the subject's eyeballs. That is the fine point on which this image came down to second rather than being first image. So friends, again I'm saying, and if you look at this image, one more point is, if you are using hands, you can use such type of cloth to cover the hand so that it doesn't have excessive highlights. Now this image again, this is a semi-profile portrait as we're discussing. If you see,
and that is in PSA competition, Rajdeep.
Yeah, this was a PSA portrait competition, and it became second.
So, how deeply they see a photograph, even a catchlight,
yes,
the position of the catchlight,
they see an image in such a way that each and every aspect of an image. Trust me, while I'm stopping in this image, let me tell you, I see among photographers that there is a tendency of using elliptical marquee tool with high feather and then selecting the face, highlighting the face so that the face is more highlighted than the other part of the body. Friends, it doesn't look natural. If you have an image where there is considerable difference between the skin tones, it doesn't look natural. Please remember that. Again, this is a semi-profile portrait. If you see the side of this face, it's not actually cutting the eyes. If rather than this from this position, if I just move slightly towards my left, the outline of the face would have cut the eye of the subject, the left eye of the subject. So that would have been a disaster for me. See, hand is used in this portrait as well. However, it is used in such.
Two questions came on the previous image.
Yes.
Shelly Mullik asked, but isn't the catchlight at 11 o'clock position? And Ramnath Banerjee asked, sir, what is the problem with the catchlight? Can you please explain? Again.
First of all, I would like to thank Ramnath Banerjee because exactly that was my question reply to the people. That what is the problem with catchlight? Because it is supposed to be the natural catchlight. It is supposed to be the catchlight which was naturally because of the light. Then the reply came, you just needed to pull down the light a bit down just to get a good light, or you would have moved the light to a certain distance so that the catchlight comes certainly towards the, a bit towards the center of the eyeballs. And coming to the first one, it is neither 11 nor 1. If you consider the face straight, it is near about, what should I say, 8 or 9, not 11. So that is the problem. See, why would it happen? The light was set for model to have the face straight. She tilted the face, and this is the output. These are the fine points that you need to remember while you are clicking, because each small fine points, if you're talking about salons, if I give my example, and of course example of say Shubhra who is also here, we discuss each and every image during awarding. What are the fine points of this image, why it should be awarded and why it should not be. So remember that the fine tunes of portraiture matters. Now, as I was coming to this image, I've used hands, but it is used in such a way that it is not creating any kind of, disruption in my view. It is actually a semi-profile portrait with subtle colors, a dark background, relief of hair, and a certain expression in the subject with a catch light nearly about the center, nearly to the center, or what I say is 1 o'clock, if you consider the eye, is there. And again, if you look at the nail polish of the subject, it is not in rich color. If it would have been any some rich color or any contrasting color, then it would have destroyed the image. Please remember, all these matters when you're creating a portrait. This image is of a makeup artist. She didn't have any makeup. It was just a test image. However, the image turned out with such a blank look that I decided to keep this image. Again, this image has catch light at one of the corners of the eye. However, I do not mind because the expression is so strong. As I see it, I kept this image. Again, one more low-key image, and for this image, I blended texture with this image to get this output. This is a profile portrait. If I go back to, if I remember, Mr. Shujoy Sheel asked this question. No, it is not necessary for the subject to look at your camera. This is a profile portrait. The subject is looking towards the main light and not towards the camera. Here, the subject is looking straight towards the camera. And if you see, I've clicked this image from a slightly upper angle, just to have a narrowing effect or the oval effect of a face. Certainly due to that, the forehead became much wider, and with height also it increased. If I did click it from a bit below, then the forehead would have been small. Again, a profile portrait with catch light exactly at the center of the eye, and I used a fill light to detail to the flowers, not to the rest of the hair. If I would have given an uniform light for the flowers as well as the hair, then it would have diverted my attention.
জ্যোতির্ময় চট্টোপাধ্যায় জিজ্ঞেস করছেন, চুলগুলো কি শার্প করা হয়েছে? আর দ্য হেয়ারস sharpened? Asked by জ্যোতির্ময় চট্টোপাধ্যায়.
No.
Yes.
No. It is actually, I added noise to this image. I actually added noise to this image. Nothing else. Any processing, whatever processing that I did, or jo karna tha wo maine kiya, uske baad I added noise to this image, just to give an aged look or a texture to the image. And as I was coming to this one, and with this one, as I was saying that I intended light to be, highlighting the flowers to a certain extent, not the other part of the hair. It is not possible to exactly highlight this. It's not always rather possible with all the limitations that we have. So what I did, I went ahead and used a snoot. Generally, we use snoot from the background to highlight the hair. Rather, I used it from the front just to highlight this, the flowers. And if you closely see, a bit of the hair above the flower is highlighted. And this was a casual shot. Well, this got me PSA gold and FIAB gold, if I remember correctly, so I don't mind. This is one image from the FIP indoor portrait workshop that few of us conducted last year. This one again with an open mouth. However, I tried to mend the teeth as much as possible by placing of light. And as you can see, the processing, I have added texture to the background. Same subject. This is again from the last shoot that I did. Again, if you see the subtle light highlighting the contour of the subject, I do not use harsh light as here light to identify the contour of the subject. I concentrate mainly on the expression of the subject so that I do not have to divert my attention to all the other things. So the setting of light should be such that highlights and shadows should blend in such a way that the shadow and highlight portion does not have a very distinctive difference. It should blend very, very slowly. Okay, so and I have some mood study as well. This is again one of my older works. It was done in 2014, I believe. This one, I believe, again, 3 years or 2 years or 3 years back. This is one of more rather last year I did this one. I mean, a part of last year's shoot. This one. If you consider this image and you see highlights on either side of the legs, on the two legs. If you are doing mood study, then you need to have an uniform light. I mean, it's not hard and fast that you should have the same light, but ideally you should have such a light that it should have an uniform output. If you look at the neck of the subject, you would see the lights are placed in such a way that it forms a shadow just in between. Again, one of my old works, nothing new. Again, old. This one is one of the images from last year, if I remember correctly. You must have in your mind, or you should pre-visualize what you want to do. Mood study doesn't mean that you have to show everything. It means that you need to highlight the shapes, accentuate the shapes and the contour of the subject. This one is again one old image, and I did blend a texture with this. Again, a texture blended with this image. Old one from 2016, I believe, this one.
May I ask you a question?
Huh?
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Nude study, is it all about a shape or a light structure or expression or the combination of both?
I would say it's a combination of your artistic views along with the either with the contours of the subject or with the highlight you want to. Just a moment, please. Yeah, whatever you want to project, it may have an expression. The subject may have an expression like the one with this one. It does. The subject does have an expression, and the expression which is quite, rather it goes with the image. And regarding figure and nude study, I mean, to me there is a difference. In nude, simply work with nudes, and in figure study, you work with the highlights and shadows and shapes and textures.
Okay.
This image, I'll stop at this image to have a discussion, because recently I've come across someone trying this image. However, they did try, but they couldn't execute. The shadow that you see or the reflection rather, not shadow, the reflection that you see beneath the subject is actually in camera. It is not created in Photoshop. Simply a black acrylic, the subject was sitting on it, and this was clicked straight in. Remember, understand the concept of this image was monk or prayer. So the hands or the palm of the hands are important in this image. So the hands or the palms are used, the highlights of the palms are used. The veil is used to showcase that we maybe the thing that I'm trying to say is the veil is used. The veil might not have been used. The veil is used in such a way that the calmness of the prayer is, and the presence of red, the color red, is just a juxtaposition. So if you're using a veil or any specific color on your image, on your subject, remember that each color represents something. So keep those in mind while you're using colors on your subject. Again, this one is straight. The reflection is in camera, not created in Photoshop. Earlier, you used to do that in Photoshop, but then I realized that I need to create it straight in the camera. As I was saying, that there is no there is no harm in admitting that previously I used to create these shadows in Photoshop, but later I realized that if I claim to have this as my specialization, it's better for me to try and achieve this when I'm clicking. Why? The reason is simple. I do not spend much time in post-processing. Trust me when I say this. Ashok, I have seen that while I have conducted classes in South Kolkata Photogenic. I spend at the most, I spend uh, 3 to 4 minutes to process an image, not more than that. Okay, this one is again from the earlier set. Now, the speciality of this subject is her eyeballs. These are actually what you see. It's not Photoshop. Her eyeballs and color are like this. Now I use the rose just in contrast with that, and the look and the wild looks that she has given. A fan was used to, help me fly those ears, and the way she is holding on to the rose, it gives me an impression of wild yet calm approach of a portrait or nude art portrait. You may consider it as nude study, you may consider it as nude portrait, whatever you wish. Can anyone right now, anyone please, I don't want everyone to answer, if anyone can, there is an issue with this image due to which I have not finalized this image. Can anyone identify that, please? Anyone, anything what comes to your mind? Okay, fine. I'll not wait. I'll proceed. If you look at the nail polish, I have not. It skipped my attention to finish that.
Great.
The nail polish was not complete. So this is these are the minute points that you need to keep in mind. When your image, it makes it to the top, and when it is judged for awards, all these small points are looked into.
That is disturbing, indeed.
Yes, it is. Once you see it, it becomes more disturbing.
Yeah.
Rajdeep, Ajay here. Just one question.
Yes, Ajay.
Okay. If you go to the image, the last image, yes. So I would just like to know, maybe for a few of the images, not all images, otherwise it will definitely take time. That is, can you tell what was the light setup you used, just for our understanding? Okay, one. And what are the do's and don'ts of doing the light setup?
Okay, Ajay, let's do the discussion on this. How can you identify the light? That you can only identify the light position. Do you see the shadow of her left hand?
Yes.
Yeah.
From the shadow of her left hand, can you identify where the main light was positioned?
Main light was positioned 4 o'clock model.
Do not care about 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I don't go by degrees. It's simply on the left hand side of the model from a higher position. Why higher position? Because the hand is creating an obstruction and the shadow is falling on her body. That's how I identified the light. And if you see, there is detail in the shadow area, and for that, fill light hitting from the reflector was used from the right hand side of the subject. And as I said before, a fan was used and one snoot was used which was hitting the background. That's it.
Okay.
Rajdeep, I want
This was the light setup, and yes.
Oh, okay, please.
Okay. Again, this is an old image.
Rajdeep, in the previous image,
yes.
Yes. I want to ask you a question. The shadow which is casted from the left arm, the shadow casted after the left arm, is it not negative? The shadow.
Okay. I understand if you feel negative. I appreciate your feedback. But let me tell you one thing. As I was discussing a while back, photography or the presence of light cannot be identified unless and until we have shadows. I could have easily got rid of the shadows by using another light just to soften the shadow, or by editing to mix the, if you can see the side of our hip and the dark portion, I could have easily blend it. However, why I chose not to do that is because now when I'm telling you to look at the image carefully at her nails, now you're seeing this. Generally, what people do is they cut the image just below the hand.
Right.
Now,
right.
why I kept, and let me answer the question, why I kept the shadow?
Yeah.
I kept the shadow because that is demanded in this image.
Okay.
And you can ask me, why do you think that the shadow is demanded in this image? My answer would be, if the shadow is not there, then just beneath her hand, then her hand would also not be in shadows. Half of her hand would also not be in shadows if the shadow is not there just beneath her hand. So if I try to place another light just to counter the shadow, it would have been a flat image. Just try to visualize that image. It would have been flat and it would not have this kind of appeal that you see right now with light and shade.
Okay.
Okay. This again is an old image. Again, can anyone identify one issue with this image?
I think the ring or something on the female's hand.
Yes, exactly. See, when you start looking at an image with minute eyes, you tend to find the small imperfections. That ring which is there, it could have been easily removed by me, but that skipped my attention. So if this image would have been there for award judging, then if such kind of juror was there, then it would have been discarded. As simple as that. And regarding this, 2 lights were used. 2 soft boxes, or rather, somebody else is getting a call. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay,
last year's shoot on geometrical patterns. This one as well.
Rajdeep, the earlier image, Ajay here, the earlier image, did you do it on glass?
No, it is simple acrylic.
Okay, simple acrylic, huh?
Yeah, simple
And
transparent acrylic.
okay, and the background was blended, or when you shot it was white?
No. I have kept separate light for the background to highlight the background.
Okay,
If you carefully look, there will be details in the background.
okay.
Let me discuss with this image, because this is one of the images which I find my own creation, which is nearly have a perfect light. If you see the highlight and shadow on each side of her hip, and the legs, and the hand, and the shoulder, and the ears, it's, I would say, nearly to the symmetry.
It's fantastic. Fantastic.
It is nothing rocket science. Two soft boxes on either side of the subject, a bit from the back, hitting to the subject and creating like a triangle. That's it. Simple.
And Rajdeep,
And
how the light casted on the fingers? On
yes.
the fingers. Yeah. On the
Why?
fingers.
If the light was not there on the fingers, then it would have been without any detail, and this would have been the balance of the image would have been gone.
Okay.
So it's very important to see each and every light, where it's casting shadow, where the highlight portions are. These are very important. Well, you can easily say that I could have, with a single click of a mouse, I could have got rid of the, what should I say, the nose of the subject. Now, when I'm saying you are looking at the nose. I know. I could have done that, but that would have been unnatural. It's human. It's not a doll that I can just simply cut apart. Okay, I believe, yeah, that was the last image. That marks the end of the presentation and the images that I shared with all of you. And if you have any questions that Ashok must have forwarded to me, Ashok, did you forward me any question? Let me just go through. How to make indoor model shoot into a creative image. Tanusri, that is a very, what should I say, generic or a very generic question, I would say. Why?
Tanusri Mitra there?
Whatever creative which to create.
Hello. Tanusri Mitra. Tanusri, are you there?
Nonetheless, if the question is after, okay, let me tell you that if you have a creative concept in your mind, what you need to do is just cut the subject or blend your creative output with your image. That's it. I would like to know about editing the indoor model image. Well, I've already told you that. Devashish Pai, how can I set two lights for based portrait, based high key portrait, based light, single light portrait, wants to know side light set of a portrait. কোনো মডেল কোনো পোর্ট্রেটে মডেলের মাথা বড় টুপি ঘোমটা থাকে তখন লাইট সেটা কি করে হবে ক্লিন উইদাউট শ্যাডো ফটো হবে ওকে পোর্ট্রেটের ক্ষেত্রে ফোকাস কোথায় হবে ওকে maybe answer a few Devashish babu there is only one sun সূর্য একটাই so what we do is we modify sunlight according to our creative wish and use that for portraits. Likewise, forget about 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 lights. When you have one single light source, you can do wonders with that. So please, again, I'm telling you, there is no hard and fast rule that you need to place your light here and there. It's entirely depending on your subject, her facial, how her skin texture, how fair or dark she is, all these things. High key portrait, Loki portrait is a very, thank you, Shubroto Kumar Dasba. Okay, high key portrait, Loki portrait. What do you understand by high key and low key? Simple. In low key, you have the low tones or the gray tones, and in high key, you have the white and the gray part of the white tones mostly. These are the only two differences. Rather than asking about low key and high key portraits, please, my advice would be please concentrate on your subject and his or her expressions. Just see that. Based on that, you decide whether you want to do a low key setup or a high key setup. Okay, this is again a very interesting question. If you're using a hat or something on your subject, how would you set the light? Again, Devashish, I would tell you that once you are setting the light, you're setting it for the subject. As long as you remember that her eyes, her face is properly illuminated. For that, if you need to lower the light, do that. If you need to, for that, if you want to increase, if you have to adjust or increase the height of the light, do that. As simple as that. It's not the props that you are setting the light for. It's the subject for which you're setting the light. Okay. Or if you are using flash inside your home, can you get the same out? If you are using flash in your home, you have not mentioned whether it's in-camera flash or an external flash. If you're using an external flash, you can bounce the flash in many angles and use it to your creative thoughts. You may use it directly, you may use it from the left or the right, or you may use your on-camera flash as the main flash and keep your external flash on a side of the subject as a slave. And what you do is simply you put what should I say, a handkerchief in front of the pop-up flash, fire it, and then see the output. Well, if you're looking for an output of output that an Electrum 800 would produce with a flash, definitely that would not be the same, but you will have the light and shadow effect. No problem with that. You can use your external flash for that. Okay, what else? Okay, where do you focus? Always in the nearest eye. Always in the nearest eye. Please do not use autofocus set by camera so that it can focus. Camera generally focuses on either the contrasting part or the edges. So please put it on single focus mode, select it to the nearest eye of the subject, and then click the image. Otherwise, if the what camera and lens do you use for generally for, okay, I'll answer that question later. Okay, if the focus is, if the focus falls on the neck or on the cheeks, you would see the eye and the lips, all these are generally obscured to a certain extent. It does not have that focus which you need or which you wanted. So always focus on the nearest eye. Okay, what else? Focus which level you want to click portrait. I have already discussed that. It depends on your subject. His eyes, nose, cheekbones, width of the face, height of the forehead, everything you need to consider while you are setting up the light. If you are clicking it from the lower level, if the subject has a short nose, it would look shorter. If the subject has a long nose, it would look normal. That's the difference with one example. Okay, and I have one question from Shujaida as well. What camera and lens I use? Shujaida, I have a D7100, Nikon D7100, camera D90, and
I also use 7100, Rajdeep.
Yes, you do. And my friends, some of my friends and well-wishers are kind enough to share their master equipments with me sometimes, like in the likes of D850 or D750 and all these things. So they're kind enough to let me use their equipment sometimes, and I use those as well. That's what I use. And for editing, I simply use Camera Raw and a bit of Photoshop. That's it. So that's the end of my presentation, and hope you have the time that you've invested today. I hope you have you're taking something back with you, and if you feel that you have queries or query regarding any specific thing, you can always refer that to Ashok, and I'll get back to you on that. Ashok, you may take it from here, please.
I can't use any word to give you thank you, Rajdeep. It's a very difficult subject. It's a very technical subject, as well as very much artistic materials are attached with it, with all these technical know-hows. Very difficult to tackle it with webinars, but you tackled it very fantastically. We already started getting feedbacks from participants. So kind of you, all the dear participants. And we are now at the end of our program.
One more thing, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ashok. I would like to say one more thing.
Yeah.
Portrait is a vast subject, and I have been asked one question by many people, that why did I choose portrait as my area? Well, I like portraits a lot, and it's something that portrait is a huge subject, and if I'm going into each and every aspect of portraiture, there are different things that you need to take into account: subjective portrait, objective portrait, characteristic come creative portrait, and even portraits and whatnot. So if I go into all these technicalities, it jumbles up in your brain. So if you find interest in portraiture, start off with the history of photography and how portraits evolved. Trust me, when you go to that, you will find various aspects of portraiture which we generally do not practice today. So please remember, if you are into portraits, if you are practicing portraiture or portraits, please deal with each subject in unique manner, because each and every subject responds to your communication in a different way. So that's all for me, and Ashok, you may carry on. I'll just mute myself now.
Okay, we don't want to take more times, because it is almost dinner time for all. Thank you everyone for participation. Thank you everyone to hold your hands with us, and we promise that in coming days we shall be presenting some interesting topics in webinars. Please stay with us. Please visit our website, and we want to show our great thanks to Rajdeep. He did
Thank you so much for everyone
a tremendous job.
For your time and patience. I'm just leaving the meeting now. It's already time for me for dinner as well. So I wish you all have a safe passage in this crucial time. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, Rajdeep, and good night, everybody. Stay safe, stay well,
Good night.
and stay with us.
Thank you, Ashok.
Thank you.